It's time for health tips. Now here's your host, Dr. Alma Jenkins.
Good evening. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dr. Alma Jenkins, and this is Health Tips. Before we really get started though, let me just remind you that Health Tips is ready to come to your church or your organization. As a matter of fact, I think we have an appointment coming up this month. So I'm looking forward to it. And we want to come and enlighten you on a health topic of your choice. We also want to hear from you about some of the dishes that we've made to see how you liked it and whether or not you've tried it. Did you improve on it and you want to share that with us? We would love to hear it. So please feel free to send us a note through WHFL. I'm sure that others would benefit from hearing what you've done to some of these recipes. One of the recipes that I think I ran into someone who had done was the collard greens that we cooked on top of the stove. And by that I mean all of it is on the stove, but instead of boiling it, we actually sauteed it and fixed it. It was delicious. And we got a lot of comments on that. Of course, we've also fixed collard greens that were boiled. We didn't use any meat in it, and it tasted like ham collards. I am serious. And for Thanksgiving, I think I'm going to try to show you how to do that so that you can have some collard greens with your turkey along with whatever else you're making. Okay, so tune in. A lot of you liked our Thanksgiving turkey. We're going to try and do that for you again. Remember, what we use for that is lemons, and we use fresh rosemary. Of course, I grow the rosemary, so I'm always happy to go out and pick that and use that. And I brine the turkey. I soak it in salt water overnight. Of course, we won't be able to show that totally, but the turkey that you will see will be a turkey that was brined. And it makes it so much juicier, so much juicier. All right, so what we're gonna do tonight is we're gonna make a dish that I've gotten from Southern Living. I'm going to add a little bit to it, but basically it's wild rice and mushrooms. And that's really good, those of you who like mushrooms. And those of you who don't, you might find that you do after this. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you about this dish is that we didn't really have time to cook the wild rice on air. But let me just tell you how we do it. We take the wild rice, put it in some oil and with a little buttery spread, those of you who don't use butter, and you saute it. Just let it saute for a while, and then we use chicken stock or vegetable stock to put in there to boil it and let it simmer. Now it's going to take a good 20 minutes or so perhaps for it, but if you do it just right, the grains stand apart and it really tastes good. Have you noticed how when you go to the restaurant and you get rice pilaf, it just like spreads out. The rice is not clumpy. Now what we're going to use tonight, I'm not going to promise you it won't be a little bit clumpy because we tried to get it ready and sometimes rice doesn't always turn out the way you want it to. But anyway, we're going to add the rice after we're done with this. So the first thing you want to do when you're making this dish is you're going to saute your ingredients that you're going to put in it, okay? So what we're going to do, since I don't use butter, can't believe it's not butter. And I'm going to use some of this. I'm going to use both butter and some cooking oil, because that is some olive oil, because not using real butter, it's not going to have as much oil in it. Okay, so we're going to start out by sauteing the onions. They tend to take a little bit longer to get ready, and I'm showing it to you right in the package that I bought it in. Okay, so we're going to do some onions. The onions can take a little minute. Okay, I'm just going to use enough that I think would be good for us. Now this is not quite as hot as I want. You kind of want it to sizzle when you put that in there, and it will in a minute. There you go. Okay, so we got our onions here, and I'm going to go ahead and season the onions a little bit. I like to grind my pepper. You know that by now about me. And I'm using some sea salt. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and put a pinch of salt in it. You know. Okay. And we're going to let these onions get brown. And you know from cooking in the past, you know that onions can take a little minute to brown. So, but you're going to keep at it. Because I love onions, but I love cooked onions. I'm not a raw onion fan. So you're going to let that kind of saute a bit, and it takes a minute to do that. Now while this is doing that, let me just tell you that for your mushrooms, I know many of you are going to be tempted to wash your mushrooms. That's going to make them soak up the water. So if you do that, and we can stay looking at that, I'm just talking to you while I do this on the side. I'm going to pat my mushrooms, and I'll show you that in a minute, but let's mind the onions right now. See, they're getting there. You know, onions give everything such a nice flavor, don't they? They do. Now, you don't have to have them all the way brown before you go ahead and put your mushrooms in, but you kind of get it started, and then you put your mushrooms in. That just kind of gives I just try to give the onions a little head start, and I'm going to make sure my mushrooms are up against the pan wall because I want them to brown. I like my mushrooms to brown. Now mushrooms soak up a lot of whatever's around, so you may have to add a little more oil if it looks like they're too dry, and then you don't want to cook it all too fast either. Okay. Okay. And I'm gonna add a little pinch to my mushrooms, a little pinch of salt to my mushrooms. Okay, on one side anyway. Okay. And notice they're getting brown nicely. Look at there, they're looking good, aren't they? Excuse me. That pepper gets in your nose. Letting the mushrooms kind of brown a little bit more. Meanwhile, the onions are browning nicely without burning. Okay. Now, we're also going to use some marsala. Okay. Okay, that's looking good. That's really just, it's fun to even just look at, and it smells good too. Ah, look at that. Now, I'm going to introduce something to you tonight, and it's called marsala. And while you're looking at that for a second, let me get the marsala, because I did not get it for you. Okay. For those of you not familiar, there is Marsala cooking wine. There it is. And we're going to be adding that shortly. Okay. I'm going to be adding that and that's looking good. Look at that. Now you're going to add some of the Marsala cooking wine. Look at that. And you kind of let that simmer, it says. Kind of let that simmer. Okay. Look, that looks like it's going to be good. It really does. Now, we don't have time to do exercise while that's doing that because I want to put a top on it. So that's what I'm doing now. Preparing my top to put on here. Let it simmer for about 3 minutes. Turn it down. Let it simmer for about 3 minutes. Now I'm going to show you something while that's doing that. Oh, this owl is on. Let's turn it off. I went ahead and made the wild rice. It looks a little different. It's not quite as free as I wanted it to be with each little strand standing to itself, but at least it's not real clumpy. That's not bad at all. So what you're going to do is, this is already prepared wild rice, and we're going to put our wild rice here. Wonderful. Okay. Look at that. That looks good. I'm going to taste just a little bit of that. A little bit of that. It is good. It really is good. And then what you do is you combine this. You can either do it this way or you can mix it in the pan. You just put that onto this like so. Look at that. These are big chunks of mushrooms, so you got to really love mushrooms for this. But look at that. Now that's delicious. Now that's really great. You can combine that. That's actually a meal plus something green on the side, or if you want to have a small piece of meat there, you can, but the mushrooms tend to be the meaty part. Okay? So let's let that cool a little bit, and let's do a little exercise, and then we're going to come back to that. All right? That was quick too. The thing that took the most time was doing the wild rice. And remember, what I said to do with the wild rice is first put it in the pan and saute it. I usually will use chicken stock with it or vegetable stock after it's sauteed in a combination of buttery spread and olive oil. So it's almost like you're frying it, but you're letting that just cook in that, saute in that until it's even browner. Then you go ahead and add the rest of the chicken stock and let it boil and put the top on it and let that cook, and the grains will start standing out to themselves, and it's delicious. I used to wonder, how did they get that wonderful taste and the wonderful look on rice pilaf? And of course you put a little salt and pepper in it. but it is really good, and it seems to be seasoned well too. When you know, now if you use chicken stock, that already has some saltiness in it, so you don't really have to shake anymore. And if you don't want, you can put some pepper there. And then if it's not what you want, you can always add, but you can't take away. So don't get into that trap of over salting your food. A lot of us are hypertensive. We don't need all that salt anyway. And if you're using chicken stock, as I said, it's probably got salt in it that you need. Plus you use the buttery spread. Okay? So let's do a little exercise and then let's taste what we have there. 1, 2, 3, and 1. And 2. You know, I see some of you in the store and you remind me that you're doing this, and I'm so proud of you. I want you now to start doing the exercises with me. Show me that you're with me on that, okay? We've got about 11 minutes and I want you to start doing these exercises with me. We're gonna stop in about, 2 or 3 minutes and taste our wonderful treat. And then we're gonna exercise the rest of the time, okay? Let's do 20 of these. 1, and 2, 3, and 4. This is fun, come on. 5, and 6, 7, and 8, and 9, and 10. 2, 3, 4. All right. So let's taste a little bit of this and see what we've got here. I'm gonna just get a little bit because I know my producer wants to taste it too. Let's try that. Look, this is what I'm gonna put in my mouth. A good forkful. That is good. It really is. Now, if you cook the rice longer, it'll be softer. So it depends on how soft you want it. That is delicious. That is good unto itself. And I did put a little salt on the rice and the mushrooms, not a lot. I used sea salt. And remember that I did use marsala. For those of you wondering what in the world is marsala, marsala is a type of cooking wine, and it really brings out all the flavors in there. And then I had some diced up onions that I put in there, and I let those saute really nice and brown. I put the onions in first, then the mushrooms, because that lets the onions cook a little bit longer. I like mine to be nice and brown. And then the mushrooms, you can saute those as long as you want, but don't burn your onions, because burn food doesn't taste that well, as you know. So with this dish here, you could add a meat or just a small vegetable serving, and you've got a meal. You have got a meal, and it is delicious too. And it's healthy. The mushrooms, the wild rice, we don't have white rice. Remember that with white rice, they're just processing out all the nutrients and whatnot. Here we've got wild rice, brown rice, healthier for you. Okay? I'll try one more little spoon of that. One more. That is good. I want you to try that. When I was growing up, we ate rice practically every day. I thought everybody did. My parents are from South Carolina, and they grow rice down there, and they eat a lot of rice there. So we really had a lot of rice. That's delicious. Again, don't over salt it. Even with the little bit I put in there, I can taste it quite prominently. So that tells me that we could use even less next time. Those of you who are hypertensive and all that. So you don't have to go heavy on that at all, okay? All right, let's do some more lifting and then we can eat some more. 1, 2, ready, and 1, and 2. For those of you wondering what we're gonna be doing, well, I think the next show is gonna be the Thanksgiving show. But then after that, we'll be doing, I think, asparagus and Brussels sprouts, okay? So if you want to go ahead and get that, but I hope to do the next show in time for you to have some tips on how to cook your turkey and some tips about dealing with the turkey, and something to go with the turkey. How about that? How many of you are cooking this year? How many of you are going out to eat this year? How many of you are going to be lonely this year? Because maybe this is the first Thanksgiving that you're without your spouse, or you're without your mom, or you're without your, significant other. Remember that holidays can be sad times for lots of people. So if you know somebody who's recently lost a loved one, or somebody that you know is alone, make a special effort to share Thanksgiving with them in some way. Even if you don't have them come over, take them something. Take them a dish, or in some way make them feel like they're part of a family. That's what makes the holidays, so special. All right? So now let's do some marches. How many of you are participating when we come on Saturday nights? I want to know that you're participating in what we're doing. 1, 2, 3, and 1. And 2, and swing those arms. 3, swing, 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 and 4. Swing, 5, swing, and 6. Swing, 7, swing, and 8. Oh, while we're doing this, let me tell you something. Those of you who want to do another smoothie, combine apples, some of those little tangerine type oranges that don't have the seeds in them. Peel you some of that, put in there, cinnamon and honey. And if you use honey, be sure you put it in a little water and a little hot water so that the honey melts a bit. Pour that together and then put some ice in there. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. You don't even have to put a squeeze of lemon in that, but you can. You don't have to. But that's another great smoothie. I just made that the other day, and I said I got to share this with my viewers because it was so darn delicious. All right? All right. Let's take a deep breath. Let it out. Deep breath in. Let it out. Deep breath in. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Let it out. Now, some of you might wonder, why does Dr. Jenkins stress exercise so much? You know exercise overall is good for you. But you also release endorphins, which are those pleasure hormones that make you feel good. And that's important too. You want to get something out of this other than knowing it's good for you, but you want to feel good too. And if you do this enough, I promise you, you'll miss it if you don't. And that means you need to do it at least 4 times a week. You need to be doing 20 to 30 minutes of exercise 4 times a week at least, to be able to really get the benefit from what you're doing. Okay? Let's do some more marches now. That's something most of you can do. Some of you are wheelchair bound, some of you are bed bound. If you're bed bound, but you're able to watch this show and you're able to move your arms, then just get these cans, even if it's 1 can or no cans. Move your arms. Move your arms. You're just laying there in the bed, move your arms. Okay? I'm proud of you just for doing that. Move your arms. For those of you in a wheelchair, when I'm walking, if you're able to move your legs, just move your legs. You don't have to actually march. If you're sitting in a wheelchair, but you can lift your legs, lift them as much as you can, and just keep doing this to the beat. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. Oh, it's so much fun. And 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14, 15. We've got about 2.5 minutes left. Come on. 17, 18, 19, and 20. 2, 3, 4. Now, for those of you just tuning in, I hope you're not just tuning in, but we love you anyway. But if you're just tuning in, we did wild rice, onions, mushrooms, and we sauteed that mixture. At least the mushrooms and the onions were sauteed in olive oil and buttery spread. And then we used Marsala cooking wine to sort of simmer it in for a while. And it's important not to season it with too much salt, just a little pinch, you know, because once you put the Marsala cooking wine in there, that adds a certain saltiness to it. It feels like anyway when you taste it. So you don't want to do that. But also you want to go ahead and make ahead your wild rice. For those of you who are not familiar with cooking wild rice, you saute it first and then add the chicken stock, okay? Or cook the rice the way you want and you can put this over it. So it's still really, really good, okay? And remember that next week is time to do the turkey so that you can know ahead of time for Thanksgiving. Now I brine the turkey overnight. I also use rosemary and lemons to brine it with the salt overnight, and that gives it a flavor that you cannot beat. And then the turkey is very, very juicy. It's not dry. Even the breast is juicy. You cut into it and the juices flow. So I think you're gonna love that. So next time we'll be doing the turkey and I'm looking forward to it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure talking to you tonight. I hope that you're watching. I hope that you're getting something from this, and I'd like to hear your comments. So drop us a line at WHFL. And don't forget that we want to come to your organization. I keep stressing that because I love the fact that we can do that. So we want to do it as much as often as we can to share this information with you. And then don't forget to exercise at least 4 days a week. For how long? 20 to 30 minutes. All right, so we're going to go out on an exercise note. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Alma Jenkins. We're so glad you're watching. Hope that you'll tune in next week. Good night.